Hello, everybody. So we are Team NRDC, and the title of our presentation today is Bridging Data Gaps for Environmental Justice, a framework for actionable insights and policy advocacy. So first, let's start with a story. So back in 2021, ProPublica released a bombshell of a report detailing the destructive effects of air pollution, specifically in the community of Laredo, Texas. So the report is quite detailed. So for the purpose of this presentation, we'll just go over these three key facts. So first, nearly half of Laredo's residents, many of whom were children, faced an elevated cancer risk of 1 in 100,000. Second, 1.8 million Texas residents suffer from asthma, with 145,000 asthma attacks being attributable to ozone pollution alone each and every year. And lastly, Texas is responsible, alone as a state, by the way, for 13.5% of the nation's illegal air pollutant emissions. So unfortunately, Laredo isn't the only community in Texas that is grappling with this problem of air pollution. Many communities in the state of Texas are dealing with this problem. One of them being Houston, which I'll touch on in a little bit, but that was actually for a while the center of our report. And like I said, I'll touch on that in a moment. And the last thing I'll say on this, regarding this slide is that because of how destructive air pollution has been in these communities, it's forced a lot of organizations and communities themselves to really rush and push for change and action immediately without necessarily taking in all the proper research or the proper precautions before just jumping to a solution. And that's why we're here and to help with that problem. So once again, we are Team NRDC. And if anyone doesn't know, NRDC stands for the National Resource Defense Council. So it's an international environmental advocacy nonprofit that really is dedicated to fighting dedicated to protecting public health and fighting climate change. And within our group, there's 6 of us. So we have Marshall, Majid, Courtney, Christina, myself, and Natalie. So as we really began to dig our teeth into what the problem is that's driving this air pollution, here listed we have our past problem statement. So what we define it as is the lack of alignment and data standards between stakeholders in the climate health ecosystem in Houston is prohibiting the best utilization of resources and solving community health challenges. Now, like I just said, this is our past problem statement, and our understanding of this problem has evolved tremendously over the course of the semester. And these 5 tools are essentially how we've been able to evolve in our understanding over the semester of what this problem really entails. So from iterating our mission model canvas to beneficiary discovery to validating our prototype, all of these tools have been very instrumental in helping us truly define and understand what the problem is that's driving these air pollution crises.
So the most important part of this process was the stakeholder interviews. This was an incredibly insightful process, and it showed us how scattered and how diverse this ecosystem is. We spoke to more than 30 people, 30 stakeholders, and was almost 20 hours of interviews. This was cross-sectoral, so there was a variety of different industries, sectors from all over, highlighting the different aspects of this ecosystem. And this is our stakeholder influence map, highlighting just how many different stakeholder groups are involved, just how complex this ecosystem and landscape is. We have different community organizations, we have different environmental groups, and different factions within the government, state government, federal government. And just shows you the saboteurs, the supporters, the influencers, and the decision makers that are all involved and are directly influenced by this problem. We highlighted different key discoveries from these stakeholder interviews. These were to do with the data. The data, a lot of them said that while we do have data, we can't really translate it into actionable insights. The solutions need to be locally adaptive because it's not enough to just have the data. We use these quotes to actually inform our assumptions. These assumptions where we have these 2 key discoveries. 1, the problem turned from a data problem to a capacity problem. 2, the key target group was actually moved from community members in around the area to community-based organizations. And this was a key discovery for us. As an extra step, we actually conducted a sentiment analysis model, which was a word cloud, where we highlighted exactly what were the key words that were used from every single one of our stakeholder groups. So what we found was that in every single one of these groups, the community and the people were actually more important to the problem than the data itself. So what was, as a step one, what we realized what was a data problem, realized was actually, as a foundational step, was actually a community and people problem.
And as we evolved in our understanding of the problem, we faced a number of different challenges that we had to work through in order to arrive at a better understanding of the problem statement. So as Majid just highlighted, we have a very diverse group of stakeholders with different interpretations of the problem, different view of the issues at hand, and we had to navigate through those. We also had to deal with varied local legal landscapes, which added an extra layer of complexity to the problem. The issue itself, air pollution, is a very complex environmental issue. There's a lack of case studies that we couldn't find basically resources or examples that we could draw from and understand from. And there was an extra challenge when it comes to establishing the causal links between air pollution and the actual health outcomes. There are a lot of political sensitivities around the issue. We had to navigate through basically the power and the influence that the industrial lobby groups had over environmental policies. And finally, we lived through an external shift in leadership. And it was anticipated that with the elections, basically policies and funding was going to be affected by the resolution of that. Following that journey, let's say, of learning, we arrived at a new problem statement, and I'm just going to read it off the screen. Advocacy and regulatory enforcement groups in Texas seek support to close data gaps and translate diverse data sets into actionable insights to empower targeted responses to air pollution crises and drive policy changes for impacted communities. And for the sake of the next slides, I'd like to highlight 3 keywords: translate data, actionable insights, and drive policy change. As we developed our understanding of the problem, we worked through a few of the IKNS frameworks in order to understand it better. These frameworks are addressed at length in our white paper, but for the sake of the presentation, I'll touch on 3 that had major impact. Number 1, knowledge gaps. So as we work through the problem, we realized that it's not about more data. It's about what kind of data is missing. Where are the gaps? Are the decision makers factoring the 911 records, healthcare cases, low grade monitor insights, and how can you form the big picture? Number 2 is the focus on usability, and here we quote Jacobson and Prusak. The future of knowledge management is not in locating the data, and it's how we make the data more usable. And finally, with the complexity of the stakeholder group, how do we make sure that we understand what jobs they want they want done, and how do we present the data in a way that adds value to their mission?
So after all of this exploration and analysis, what we came up with was 3 key recommendations that operate, that build on and from each other to form a cohesive whole. So those 3 recommendations are presented here as a very simple pyramid. So at the bottom you have where our recommendations are for NRDC to first work to build capacity for collaboration, second, to build capacity for translation, and third, to build capacity for action. So I'll speak to the first 2 of these levels of the pyramid. You'll see the foundation is building capacity for collaboration. And collaboration really forms the basis, as we've heard, of whether you're working, whether it's data partners, whether it's policy regulators, whether it's stakeholders, whether it's advocacy groups, the importance of working together and to build networks and connections is clear from our analysis. Next slide, please. So what you see here, first I'll say that NRDC and through our work and analysis, really we recognize that NRDC and its advocacy, regulatory and policy partners already exist in a network, right? What's shown here is an initial network map of key key stakeholders in the Texas air quality landscape. What's shown is in the blue bubbles are the individuals, and the yellow are organizations. Starting at the middle, you'll see the the big bubble in the middle. That's Matt Tejada. So starting with the connections that he provided to us, you can quickly see how the network expanded to include individuals and then also organizations that they're connected to. And what this represents, so some of the connections are stronger than others, but there exists this solid foundation from which to continue to build networks for impact. And so our that first recommendation around collaboration and in service of the top two levels of the pyramid, the capacity for translation and action, is for NRDC to specifically and with intention continue to build networks for data usability and translation, and also then moving from capacity to action. Next slide, please. So as you've heard, when we started our initial problem statement and our exploration, we were really focused on that usability and integration of data, or data, depending what you say. And so even as we moved as a group away from that as being the core problem, what we recognize and we know that data usability remains a key and critical factor to our challenge statement and to meeting the challenge. During our discovery, we also learned that NRDC is at the initial stages of building a data management system, or DMS. And what the vision for that DMS is a global open access repository for all air quality data, be it satellite data, low-cost monitor data, state, federal, local, you name it. The vision is for that DMS to hold that. And the other thing we learned was that NRDC also does not have a data strategy. So this was a very important discovery. And so our second recommendation, which speaks to the second layer of that pyramid, is for NRDC to put together or to build a data strategy to help guide the usability and integration of data across all of these sources. Very quickly, I won't go into a lot of detail here. This slide is showing a very high level sort of approach to a data strategy, alignment on key principles, outcomes, and then the important piece along the bottom is our 4 pillars. So data doesn't exist in a vacuum. So you have people and culture, you have data, you have access and analytics, and then of course you have the governance. And the thing I'd like to draw attention to is the way that collaboration, yes, it's explicit in the people and culture pillar, but it would also, collaboration and building networks and working together is critical across all these pillars. So I'll hand that over to.
Thank you. So this brings us to our final recommendation for capacity for action. Throughout every interview we had, whether we were talking about data, whether we were talking about policy change, we kept hearing the importance of having conversations, asking questions, and really taking the time to understand the unique needs of every community we were dealing with. So when we looked at our own IKNS experiences and our capstone process, we realized we could draw on that, and we're suggesting a program called CLEAR. Beginning with a knowledge and maturity assessment, community organizations and the CLEAR team will work together through a process of discovery, learning, stakeholder engagement, and planning for stakeholder advocacy. We wanted to leave NRDC with a really strong foundation to build this from. So in addition to our white paper, our project overview, the program overview, we are also providing an adapted maturity model, a knowledge scorecard, a clear canvas, and curated tools from organizations like the EPA. We are also leaving NRDC with an easy communication tool to communicate what this process is going to look like for their organizations.
Clean Air Springfield, a clear story. A community organization called Clean Air Springfield, CAS, has formed near Houston, Texas, to fight air pollution from a medical sterilizing plant. After their first couple of meetings, it becomes clear to the group leaders that they aren't even sure how to get started. One of the organizers has heard about other communities using air monitors and searches on the internet for information about starting a program. They find the CLEAR program on the NRDC website. CAS applies to the CLEAR program. They submit a proposal and intake survey based on templates provided by NRDC and complete an interview over Zoom with the CLEAR team. The CLEAR team uses the provided materials and information from the interview to assess the organizational capacity of CAS on the Environmental Justice Maturity Model. CAS is assessed at Level 2, Foundational. They are placed in the embedded coach pathway and will work through the Frame, Train, Campaign, Sustain, FTCS blocks on the CLEAR canvas to outline their goals. CLEAR works with the organization to draft a job posting for an embedded coach and advertises the position on local job boards and at nearby universities. A coach is hired with the necessary base skills for organizing and facilitation. They complete a 2-week training program with NRDC before embedding with CAS. Using the CLEAR canvas as a guide, the coach begins hosting a series of roundtable meetings with CAS leadership, local government officials, and other identified stakeholders to collect feedback and understand community needs. Together with organization leadership and using feedback gathered from stakeholders, the coach helps to define the short-term goals and long-term objectives of CAS, and they complete the first box on the CLEAR canvas. The coach and organizational leaders use their learnings from local conversations and the original intake materials to determine what areas most need capacity building, such as air pollution science, data and technology, and grant writing. The coach engages with experts on the CLEAR team to determine the best practices and resources to meet these needs. The CAS leadership and coach begin the iterative process of filling in the other sections of the CLEAR canvas with activities and strategies to build capacity. The coach sets up trainings, hosts town halls, and connects the leadership team to other necessary resources to support their goals. This process continues throughout the coach's time with CAS, and the CLEAR canvas is updated to support the short-term learning goals and long-term organizational objectives. The coach continues to facilitate learning and connect CAS to the broader CLEAR network. The coaching period ends, and CAS has completed CLEAR canvas to guide their continued work in the coming months. The canvas highlights key strategies for achieving their long-term objectives and centers the organization's efforts. To wrap the program, the CLEAR team, the coach, and CAS leadership conduct another maturity assessment to help CAS understand how their needs have shifted. Clean Air Springfield remains a part of the CLEAR network past their coaching period. They continue to actively learn from and engage with similar organizations and clean air experts across.
So we wanted to conclude with a quote that resonated with us throughout the entire semester. And this came about when early on with our class mentor, when we were trying to figure out how in the world are we going to deal with this complex issue and come up with potential solutions. And it says, if you can get one source of air pollution relocated, modified, or shut down, you can save a kid's life. And so at the end of the day, we don't ever want to forget that this issue impacts the health and lives of people. And so we need a people-oriented solution. And that's why communities need to be able to tackle this issue on their own, and they need the capacity to do so. And whether that's through translating data, informing policy, or building partnerships, we hope that our proposed solutions will help empower community organizations to drive long-term environmental action against air pollution within communities. So some of our lessons learned throughout this process while we were going through it, just breaking the fourth wall here, when we did interviews, we discovered that immediately talking afterwards, debriefing, we were able to make connections, find patterns much faster. They were most effective. The interviews were most effective when multiple team members attended, so that you could help with different duties. Avoiding solution bias was huge. It was hard not to figure out what could possibly work early on when it took us weeks to really discover what the actual problem was. And then lastly, keeping an open mind as we brainstorm MVPs and potential solutions that helped us kind of navigate our way through that. And finally, we would just like to give some acknowledgments to Matthew Tejada and NRDC for helping us at every step along the way when we needed it. The interviewees provided so much insight, really helped us shape the problem. Jamie and Kriza for guiding us throughout this capstone. The class mentors helped us give us like critical feedback when we needed it so we could pivot. And then lastly, our network, colleagues, friends, family, as well as Christina's brother-in-law who did the voiceover. Thank you, everyone.